The Falcons' offense goes as their offensive line goes. So, just how impactful are the injuries to Kaleb McGary and Drew Dalman gonna be?
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started. So, guys, if you don't know me, I'm your humble host, Aaron Freeman, a.k.a. Mr. Drew, a.k.a. the Jolly Green Giant, a.k.a. Mr. a.k.a. and I've been covering the Atlanta Falcons for a very long time, almost 2 decades, formerly at FalcFans.com, RIP, still going strong on this illustrious podcast, and I thank each and every one of you that goes strong with me as an everydayer of this pod, which means you make it your first listen each and every day. And to become an everydayer, all you have to do is subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So today's episode, we are joined by Josh Kendall of The Athletic to discuss the Falcons' Week 3 loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, discuss some of their late game decision making. But first, we got to start with the injuries up front. For me, Josh, the biggest story coming from this game stems from the injuries up front. And on Monday morning, we learned a little bit more information to the extent of the injuries to right tackle Kaleb McGary and starting center Drew Dalman. Both players exited the Chiefs game in the second quarter. McGary is dealing with an MCL sprain. Drew Dalman dealing with a high ankle sprain. Raheem Morris indicated in his Monday presser that they'll have a clearer picture of those guys' timetable for recovery a little bit later this week. But Josh, I'm curious, what are your thoughts on these injuries and how they impact things moving forward for the Atlanta Falcons? And how do you think they impacted things last night on Sunday Night Football against the Chiefs?
My expectation would be at this point that Kaleb McGary is back sooner than Drew Dalman. In terms of how they affected Sunday night, I think a couple of ways. Kaleb McGary, for some of his struggles in the pass game, is a pretty good run blocker. I think that hurt their run blocking with Storm Norton in there. Ryan Newsel played pretty well. Kirk Cousins used the word phenomenal. However, the fact that Ryan Newsel was in the game rather than Drew Dalman is one of the factors, not the only factor by any means, but one of the factors they didn't try quarterback sneak on the late 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1. Cousins' mobility, non-Achilles related, just his general mobility, and the fact that you've got a center in there that you just don't have the snap reps with, were two of the reasons that they didn't call a quarterback sneak there, even though they considered it. So, in the little things, there were some problems with the 2 new offensive linemen, and the little things are what this often comes down to. So I don't want to minimize it, but both of those guys played well enough to win. The Falcons, I think, the last year, really 2 years, are pretty spoiled offensive line injury-wise. What they have been able to do in terms of rolling the same 5 guys out there over and over is not the norm in the NFL. So this is just kind of they're having to deal with that reality now.
Yeah, and one of the things I've said over the last couple of years is it does seem like this team's success and failure on offense kind of hinges on where the offensive line plays. We saw that kind of already to an extent in this season so far, where week 1, the offensive line struggled in that game. Week 2, they kind of dominated things. And I think Sunday night's game against the Chiefs was kind of an up and down performance. Do you feel like, that statement about, the offensive line is kind of where the indicator of the direction of this football team goes? Is that continue to be an issue this season for the Falcons?
Yeah, I think so for sure. I think that, this obviously the only win on the schedule so far, but also the game where they've just looked the best for 60 minutes was Philadelphia when they ran for 152 yards. They came out like a house of fire against the Chiefs throwing the football, but they couldn't sustain it because they just couldn't run the ball. This team has got to run the ball. I mean, I understand you pay $100 million for a quarterback because you think he ought to be able to carry you, but I don't think anybody in Atlanta ever thought that Kirk Cousins was the guy to carry you. They just thought he was the guy that could make all the plays. If you put him in position to make the plays, you got to run the ball to put him in that position. This is still a team, even though there's no Arthur Smith around, that is going to have to run the ball to consistently be a factor.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about that late game decision making that you indicated earlier, that, the offensive line injuries may have impacted. Those late game decisions are going to get a lot of scrutiny. That's going to be no different in this loss against the Chiefs. And we'll continue this conversation with Josh Kendall Athletic on whether the criticism on that late game decision making is fair or foul as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. So, guys, NFL teams spent all summer trying to find the right pros to fit their roster, and you're going to be spending this fall trying to find the same right professionals for your small business. But it's so much easier for you that you don't have to sweat it out in the Georgia heat because you got LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools that are going to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. They're not just any old job board. LinkedIn's going to help you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but just might be open for the perfect role in any given month. Over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. And on LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Join the 2.5 million businesses that use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So I'm here with Josh Kendall of The Athletic. And, I know you wrote about some of the team's late game decision-making in your column, post-game reaction column about this. And, I saw some comments, I saw some tweets from folks, being critical of the Falcons' decision not to kick the field goal on the 4th and 5 down at the Chiefs 6-yard line, down 5 with 4 minutes left to go in the game. I said it on the postcast. I thought this was the right call for the Falcons to go for the touchdown in that situation. But I'm curious, Josh, what were your thoughts on that? And do you think the criticism of them not going for 3 and going for 6 instead is fair about?
No, I'm 100% with you. I don't think that you even consider kicking a field goal in that situation. You don't take the lead. You're still losing, and you're giving the ball back to Patrick Mahomes. None of that math adds up to me, even though, the Chiefs have not been dominant offensively this year. Absolutely. You go for the touchdown, and it worked out. I mean, I think their plan worked out. It ultimately failed, but, the reason you go for it there is because if you don't get it, you've got the offense backed up, you hope to get a stop, and you get a whole nother chance at it. And that's exactly what happened. The analytics will tell you that it was the clear right decision. And, I don't know enough math to argue against math, so I'm going against those guys. I'm going with those guys.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think the decision was right, that you just didn't execute the way that you wanted. Now, I think that gets us to the conversation on the next opportunity the Falcons had. A lot more scrutiny, I think, fair on the 4th down run call, right? Again, going for it was the right call in that situation. You didn't execute that run play either on the 3rd and 1 or the 4th and 1, and that ultimately cost the Falcons the game. I was more critical of the specific play call in that 4th and 1 call, but I'm not particularly losing too much sleep over that. But I'm curious, what were your thoughts on that play call? And is the criticism fair or foul for that one?
I'm generally only in a rare circumstance am I going to go back and say that was a stupid play call. I think the good play calls are the ones that work. The bad play calls are the ones that don't work. And we just sort of retrofit all that in there. I think if you're going to make a coaching criticism, let's roll it back. I'm going to make 2 coaching criticisms, neither one of them about the play call. You've got to be able to, with Tyler Algier, block that double team on 3rd and 1 better and pick it up there. You've got to coach that play better so that you pick up that 1st down. You've got to coach the 4th and 1 play better so that Tyler Algier, who we all know is a very reliable player, doesn't just flat miss Nick Bolton coming through the back door and blowing up the play. Because if Tyler Algier stops and picks up Nick Bolton there, that's a 1st down. I'm also going to criticize being so scared of Patrick Mahomes that you don't throw the ball on 4th and 1. Even if Bijan gains 3 yards around the left end, you're still at 30 seconds, and you've got to get the ball into the end zone. At some point in all of this game theory and time management, et cetera, you got to score. I feel like the Falcons there on 4th and 1 had the perfect opportunity Kirk Cousins comes to the line with some flexibility because he checked into the 4th and 1, the wide, the sprint out that they ran. So in theory, and I don't know this for a fact, you would think he's got a pass play in his pocket there. If he doesn't, he should have. For me, I wouldn't have quarterback sneaked it. I wouldn't have run up the middle. I would have thrown the ball in the end zone.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Josh. I'm with you on the criticism of play calling. Folks, if they're not regular listeners of this podcast, there are kind of 3 things that I don't spend as much time complaining about as probably a lot of media people, other podcasters, and fans do, which is play calling, officiating, and clock management. To me, unless it's egregious, like I'm not just going to spend that much time. To me, the game plan in week 1 was egregiously bad, and so we spent several days complaining about it. This, to me, I don't agree with the play call that the Falcons went with on that 4th down call, as you stated. I think they would have been better served throwing the football. You kind of ran it to your best option on 3rd and 1 to Tyler Algier. It didn't work, so to me that indicates you probably should do something a little different on that 4th down call than what the Falcons wound up doing. But it wasn't egregious to the point where I feel like it's going to be worthy of too deep a discussion. I think you're right, Josh. It's just simply coach it better, execute it better, and you'll get the job done on that front. But yeah, I'm curious when it comes to, what this team failed to do in this week 3 game, or what they succeeded in this week 3 game. Were there other takeaways from you in this Chiefs game that you feel like, positive or negative, the Falcons can hang their hat on and take away from this game, in either things that they need to improve or things that they need to continue to maintain to continue forward this year?
Well, I think you've got to look at 3rd downs to me, and you can look at it however you want to. This team's been 2 of 9 on 3rd down in all 3 weeks. It's pretty remarkable just statistically. But it's also the biggest reason that they couldn't upset the Chiefs. They just couldn't stay on the field offensively, not even to get yourself in field goal range or to convert, just to stay on the field a little bit and to give your defense a breather in that stretch that covered the 2nd and 3rd quarter that Kansas City dominated. So if you're the Falcons, do you think if we just get that figured out, we feel like we're onto something here? Maybe so, but getting that figured out is that there's no guarantee that you get that figured out. And if you convert, 12% of your 3rd downs, you're not going to the playoffs. So they've got to get that fixed. If they get that fixed, I think you've seen some reasons for optimism. So I don't come out of Sunday night pessimistic about this football team. I'm not sure I'm optimistic, but I think they, in the last 2 weeks in prime time, they have represented themselves okay. They haven't embarrassed themselves. They haven't looked like they weren't ready for prime time. So I think, roll the clock back into the a month ago, and we all felt pretty realistic that 1 and 2 was kind of where you were going to land. It maybe even best case scenario coming out of these first 3 games. You got 3 division opponents coming up next. So you still got, you're very much in control of your destiny if you're the Falcons. I think all of that stuff is good news.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and we'll get into that, right? It's a bitter pill to swallow with the Falcons losing this game, but they do have to turn their page to the next opponent. And given that these next opponents are division rivals, I think you can make an argument that, this season may be made or broken by their upcoming results. And we'll break that down as we wrap up today's Locked On Falcons here with Josh Kendall of The Athletic. Hey, NFL fans, you want to start your NFL season off right with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because when you get that hunch in the middle of the game, you can go check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the very same page that you place your bets. And you can get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed, when you place your first $5 bet. All you got to do is go to FanDuel.com, check it out, right? That guaranteed bet means win or lose, man. You can spend that $5 on whatever you want, and FanDuel's going to give you $200 to spend however you please, right? And whether that's on the upcoming Falcons-Saints game where the Falcons are favored by 1.5 points, or maybe you feel like, hey, let's throw some money on the Georgia Bulldogs. I know some of you Georgia fans are upset that they're now the #2 team in the country, but guess what? that means the odds for the Georgia Bulldogs to win it all this year have actually gone in your favor. You can win even more money. It was plus 270 to, at the beginning of the year. They moved down one spot. It's now plus 400. So you can make even more money if you feel that emboldened by those darn good dogs to take it all. All you got to do is check it all out at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. So wrapping up today's Locked On Falcons, let's talk about what's next for the Falcons coming off of this Chiefs loss. You got to take it one game at a time. But, Josh, you and I, as a podcaster, myself, as a beat writer, yourself, we can take big picture stuff.
I can look at all I want to.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a free country. We can do that, right? They have 3 divisional games coming up, consecutive ones. 5 of their next 7 games are divisional games. Is it fair to say that basically the Falcons' ability to make the playoffs could be decided over the next 7 weeks, depending on how they perform in these upcoming divisional games? I feel like they have to win at least 3 out of their 5 divisional games to control their destiny, as you just referred to it, to maintain control, where you got to be in a position where you're going to have a winning record in a division. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think you can come out of this. I don't think you can stub your toe. You can't be 1-4. You can't even, I think you're right, probably can't even be 2-3 in these division games, because then you're right back into this feeling where you feel like you've got to climb a mountain in the second half of the season, which is what this team has felt like for the last 6 years. And that's a hard mountain to climb, as evidenced by the fact that they haven't successfully done it in the last 6 years. You were not supposed to have to climb that mountain this year. You might not have expected to be Super Bowl contenders, but you spent all this money. You made a coaching change because you thought that the NFC South was there to be won. And all of a sudden, it doesn't necessarily look that way. Tampa and New Orleans both lost last week, but they both looked really good through weeks 1 and 2. Everything that's happened so far in the NFL with the Falcons, the Bucs, the Saints, even the Panthers to some degree, is a small sample size, so we don't really know. But I think we will know over these next 7 weeks.
Yeah. And when you look ahead specifically to the Saints, what are your thoughts on that potential matchup between the Falcons and Saints?
I think if you're the Falcons defensive coaching staff, you're not necessarily terrified, despite how New Orleans looked in the first 2 weeks, because this is another Kubiak calling plays. This is that Shanahan system that Raheem Morris and Jimmy Lake are very familiar with. I asked Raheem earlier today to save you some time this week, because you can, 40% of your game plan is already done when you walk in the door for that meeting, because you've seen this offense so many times. He says you can't do it like that. You got to go through the process. You got to spend the same amount of time. But I feel like they feel okay about facing this offense. I think they feel pretty good about their ability to limit explosive plays. I think what worries them as they're sitting in the meeting rooms right now, and what should worry Atlanta fans, is if you don't tackle consistently better, then Alvin Kamara is going to do to you what Patrick Mahomes did to you in the second and third quarter Sunday night, which is just play keep away with the football.
Okay. Well, Josh, any other thoughts about the Falcons as we sit here today that fans should keep an eye on in the coming days, weeks, as well as any upcoming content that you're working on over at The Athletic?
We'll just keep plugging away with the content. My only thought is I wish they'd quit playing night games, because I'm tired. They go too late.
Yes, people do not understand. When you're covering a team, primetime games are the worst. No one has fun, but the fans love them. So got to give the people what they want. Yeah, we're selfish here, but Josh, I really do appreciate you joining me on today's episode, recapping this game, talking a little bit about some of the issues that the Falcons are dealing with and what they have to overcome to come out of this next stretch of games looking good. Anything else you want to plug before we duck out of here?
No, I don't think so. I appreciate you having me.
All right, Josh. Well, I look forward to seeing what the Falcons do. I look forward to seeing what you're writing over there at The Athletic, and we'll, hopefully get some 1 o'clock kickoffs a little bit more. We got another Thursday night game coming, so
right around the corner.
Yeah, so catch up on sleep between now and then, so that you'll be better for that.
Right.
All right, man. So, guys, that is it for us with Josh Kendall. Appreciate Josh for sharing his insights in this Week 3 matchup, as well as the upcoming divisional games. Your next listen here on Locked On Falcons will be an all 22 review, where we'll break down what I see in the film in this week 3 game. Again, we're not going to spend too much time, as much energy as other people are. I get it. It's a big game, Sunday night football. Falcons had an opportunity to steal this one from the Chiefs. People were disappointed in that, but it's like, it is what it is. As Josh said, like 1-2. Again, I know Josh said we thought 1-2, and he was probably referring to me and him, because I know some of you guys were out here being like, no, they're going to go 3-0 and whatnot. But I think, we're not going to spend that much energy worried about this Chiefs game. We'll watch some of the things I plan on when I get into the film, and we'll sort of see what emerges that are going to be talking points in that all 22 review tomorrow on your airwaves here on Locked On Falcons. I want to look at the third downs. I'll look at the 9 plays from the Chiefs, and I'll also probably look at the 18 from the first 2 weeks to see if there are patterns emerging when it comes to why the Falcons struggle on third downs. We'll talk about the run game. We'll talk about how diverse it is. We'll talk about Ryan Newsel, Storm Norton, their impact, positive or negative, in that run game, and how that could affect things moving forward for this offense. We'll talk about Troy Anderson in the run defense. If you missed Jarvis Davis's epic rant on the postcast on Locked On Sports Atlanta on Sunday evening, go check that out for how poor he thought Troy Anderson played. I didn't think Troy Anderson played as poorly as Jarvis did, but that was watching it live. We'll see what the film says, and maybe I'll come away being like, Jarvis was, spitting game in that postcast, or I'll sit here and disagree with Jarvis, and we'll fight about it later this week. We'll talk about the play action passing. It was something that stood out against the Eagles. We'll see if it stands out against the Chiefs as well, because that's going to be a big way that the Falcons can compensate for maybe not necessarily having as effective a run game. And one of the other things I do want to focus on is the blitzes with the Chiefs and how effective they were. And did it seemed like watching the game live that seemed to have an impact on Ryan Newsel being in the game versus when Drew Dalman was the game. Again, does that match the reality? So those are some of the things that I'll be going into the all 22 focus on and paying attention to, and we'll sort of see what I glean on those things potentially on tomorrow's episode. If I don't wind up talking about any of those things, then it probably means that it wasn't as significant an issue as I thought it was going to be going into the film. We'll see what all other things emerge from the all 22. And if you also are a Locked On Falcons insider, you not only get access like every other everydayer of the podcast to that all 22 review that will air Tuesday evening on YouTube, Wednesday morning on your preferred audio feeds, but you will also get an extended all 22 review where you can watch actual video of the plays that we discuss on that breakdown. Those are usually available Wednesday morning or Wednesday afternoon. So sign up as a Locked On Falcons insider, and you can check out those extended all 22 reviews for free for the first 14 days. It's a 14-day free trial. Then it's $4.99 a month. So whether you sign up tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday, or whenever, you can get that, Chiefs one for free. You can get the upcoming Saints one for free. And then, maybe you'll even get the Bucs one if my math is correct. So yeah, if you wait till probably Wednesday or Thursday this week, you'll probably get the next 3 extended all 22 reviews for free to see if you like it or not. And then you can pay $4.99 a month, or you can drop it and be like, hey, it's not for me. I'll just go back to being a regular everydayer in no sweat. Works for me, regardless of what decision you guys wind up making on that. So the extended all 22 reviews are a perk of the Locked On Falcons Insights. You also get sort of my insights, live during the game. Also, a lot of the things that you hear on the podcast, I often share with the insiders, days, if not weeks ahead of time, just because I wait till the ideas are fully formed before I present them to you on the podcast. But the insiders get the sort of half-baked ideas, but those are often kind of percolating. They're marinating for several days, if not weeks, in this, engine that is my brain, before I share them with you guys on the podcast. So that is something that you can always, if you're an everyday of this pod, you're always going to be days, weeks, if not months ahead of the rest of the fan base and most media when it comes to this football team and this sport. And you can even be further ahead if you become an insider. So that is a perk. If you just like to being, you're the type of person that likes to comment first, right? That's you're the exact type of person that should become an insider. Join that link in the description below at joinsubtext.com/lockedonfalcons if you want to become that. But extended all 22 review coming your way for the insiders, regular all 22 review coming your way for the everydayers. Continue to make Locked On Falcons your first listen so you don't miss that on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out Locked On NFL as your second listen to catch up with everything that happened around the rest of the league. And of course, if you want to get into the specifics of a specific game, you want to get into the specifics of the Saints Eagles game, Locked On Eagles, Locked On Saints is definitely going to have you covered. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, guys, your team every day.